Today we're diving deep into the woods to uncover a story of conflict, control, and rebellion. It's a story that's literally hidden in the grain of the wood that built our modern world. So let's get into it. It sounds like the start of a pretty strange riddle, doesn't it? But the answer connects them all. Wood. And we're not just talking about any wood. We mean vast, staggering quantities of timber, taken from forests that were already home to millions of people. This is the story of how a global hunger for wood completely redrew the map and rewrote the rules of life itself.
Okay, so before we get to the empires, we have to understand the world they found. To an outsider, a forest might just look like empty wilderness, but for the communities who actually lived there, well, they were anything but empty.
Just take a look at this. This isn't just a collection of trees, it's a universe. A single patch of a saw forest like this one can have up to 500 different plant species. It was a supermarket, a pharmacy, and a hardware store all rolled into one, providing literally everything a community needed to thrive. And this is a great reminder of how connected we still are to that world. The oil that might be in your chocolate, it can come from sal seeds. The rubber in your car tires, the spices in your kitchen. It's so easy to forget that our modern lives are still built on the foundation of the forest. So, what changed? Well, in the 19th century, a new force arrived on the scene with a very different and very specific appetite. Empires were expanding, and those empires needed wood. A lot of it. And right here, this is the heart of the whole conflict. You see, the local communities needed a diverse, messy forest, a mix of all kinds of things for fuel, food, and medicine. But the British Empire, they needed something completely different. They wanted tall, straight, strong timber for the Royal Navy's warships and, most importantly, for the railways. What's so striking here is just the sheer scale of this new demand. The railway network in India didn't just grow, it absolutely exploded. And every single kilometer of that track was laid on a bed of timber. Just let that number sink in. 2,000. That's how many wooden planks or sleepers they needed for just 1 mile of track. Now, multiply that by the hundreds of thousands of kilometers being built. You can start to see how the forests around the railway lines just began to disappear.
Facing this massive, almost unbelievable demand, the colonial government realized it couldn't just let contractors cut down trees randomly. No, they needed to control the forests. So they decided to get scientific about it.
They brought in a German expert, a guy named Dietrich Brandis, who introduced this new system called scientific forestry. But here's the thing. As ecologists point out today, it wasn't very scientific at all. It was really just tree farming. The whole idea was to clear away these complex natural ecosystems and replace them with orderly, single-species plantations. And this slide just says it all, doesn't it? On the left, you've got the rich, chaotic, circular life of a real natural forest. On the right, you have the so-called scientific forest, straight lines, uniform height, just one species. It's like they imposed the logic of a factory onto a living, breathing world. To enforce this new system, they passed new laws. The Forest Act of 1878 carved all the land up into categories. The best forests, the ones full of valuable teak and sal, were declared reserved. And suddenly, activities that people had done for centuries, grazing their cattle, collecting fruit, hunting, became illegal. And you can just feel the human cost of these policies right here. This petition from the Baiga community, it's just heartbreaking. Their entire way of life was criminalized, literally overnight. They went from living in the forest to stealing from it. And now they were at the mercy of forest guards who would demand bribes and free food.
So when you push people this far, when you take away their homes, their food, and their dignity, they are going to push back. And that's exactly what happened.
This brings us to 1910 in the kingdom of Bastar in central India, where things finally reached a boiling point. The government proposed reserving 2/3 of the forest, and this was right after a series of terrible famines. For the people there, it was the absolute last straw. Led by figures like Gunda, the rebellion spread like wildfire, and look at how they communicated, not with letters, but with symbols everyone understood. They looted bazaars, burned down police stations, and attacked officials. They targeted everything that represented the colonial state and its oppressive new laws. And you know, this wasn't just some isolated event. This same tension was playing out all over the globe. Halfway across the world, in Java, Indonesia, a leader named Surontiko Samin started a movement against the Dutch colonial rulers. He challenged them with this beautifully simple but powerful argument. How can the state own something it didn't create? Now, the rebellions were brutally suppressed, but the story doesn't end there. The pressure on the world's forests was actually about to get even worse, before a totally new understanding finally began to emerge. The First and Second World Wars were absolutely devastating for forests. The British cut trees freely to meet war needs. In Java, the Dutch used a scorched earth policy, burning huge piles of teak logs just to keep them from the Japanese, who then came in and exploited the forest anyway. War became another massive engine of deforestation.
But in the decades after all this conflict, a new idea finally started to take hold. After years and years of failure, governments started to realize that trying to keep local people out of forests simply didn't work. They saw that true conservation had to involve the communities who actually lived there, who understood the land, and who had protected sacred parts of the forest for generations.
So, what can we take away from all this? Let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture that this history shows us.
This table does a fantastic job of showing the same fundamental story playing out in different places. I mean, you have different empires, but it's the same playbook. Secure the timber, impose new laws, and criminalize local customs. And in response, you see different kinds of resistance, from armed uprisings to peaceful civil disobedience.
And this chart adds a really crucial layer to the story. While railways were a huge driver of deforestation, you can see here that the biggest single cause in this period was actually agricultural expansion, often to grow commercial crops like tea and coffee for markets back in Europe. The forests were really being cleared from all sides at once.
And so we're left with this fundamental question. The story we've explored is from the past, but the conflict is very much alive today in debates over conservation, land rights, and climate change. Who gets to decide? The state, big corporations, or the communities whose lives are woven into the forest itself? That's the question this history leaves us with.